Chapter 1. Jake sat at the bar nursing a whiskey, lost in his drunken thoughts, when the swinging doors were thrown open. A tall, obviously drunk stranger walked in and staggered to the bar. He balanced himself next to Jake, though it took several tries to sit on the bar stool. The stranger glanced at Jake and then looked away with the abruptness of a mother catching her son playing with himself. Jake felt himself blush for no discernible reason and offered to buy him a drink when the bartender approached them warily. Cooper, the proprietor and resident drink slinger, eyed the stranger as he wiped out a glass that looked dirtier than before he'd started cleaning. "You gonna cause me problems again, cocksucker?" the barkeep asked him, voice low and vicious. The stranger looked around dramatically. "Cocksucker? Where? Has my luck changed?" Jake choked back a laugh as he sipped the last of his drink and banged the glass on the over-varnished counter that looked to be stained with blood. Spilled not all that long ago. Cooper shot Jake a look, who held up the empty glass. "One more from me and one more from my friend here." "Should have figured he was your friend," Cooper growled, spitting into the glass he'd been cleaning and wiping again. "You two so much as look at another customer crossways and you'll get a good ass-whooping before I shoot you myself." Jake kept the man's gaze, not backing down, and repeated himself before adding, "You going deaf, old man?" Cooper grabbed Jake's glass, took a bottle from behind him without looking, and poured the amber liquid into his glass, and then into the one he'd been fiddling with. He slammed it down in front of the stranger. As he went to put the bottle away, Jake cleared his throat and motioned for him to keep the bottle on the counter. "Let's see your money," Cooper said. Jake reached into his pocket, pulled out some neatly folded, if worn-looking bills, and peeled off 3. "Keep the change and buy yourself a smile." Cooper's features softened as he scooped the bills up and walked away. With the bartender now dealt with, Jake turned to the stranger who had already gulped his drink and motioned for him to follow. Jake grabbed the bottle and followed the stranger to an empty table in the saloon's rear. It was relatively empty since it was a Tuesday evening and just a tad past sunset. On his way through the empty tables and the lone card game, he sat at a side table with only 2 chairs facing each other. His stomach was in knots, the acid from the lack of food and abundance of alcohol, not to mention the unexpected yearning for the stranger, was not helping his digestion. Jake sat in a chair facing away from the front of the saloon and invited the stranger to take the other. "I'm Jake," he said, pouring a drink into his new friend's empty, spit-shined glass. The stranger held his glass up in a salute and said, "I'm Ethan, and much obliged." Jake raised his glass in kind, and they both threw the shots back and simultaneously wiped their mouths with the sleeve of their shirts. They laughed at the mirrored actions, and Jake poured 2 more. "Awful brave to be seen with a cocksucker," Ethan said with a slight and somewhat nervous grin. Jake chuckled and resumed his sipping. "Ain't met a man yet who hasn't done it a time or 12. That made Ethan laugh. "What about you?" he asked Jake. Jake smiled, his eyes already undressing the stranger. "Oh, well, I've done it at least 13 times. Play your cards right and you can add 1 more. I'm not much for cards. I prefer dice. I like how they feel in my hand as I shake them." Ethan said nothing, but his vast, dopey grin spread. "New in town?" "I was passing through on my way to San Francisco, but maybe I'll stay a while and see how things pan out." "What do you do for work?" "As little as possible," Ethan said. "I had an inheritance from my grandmother when she died last winter. I thought I'd explore, see the territories, and live life." Jake nodded and drank some more, then pushed the bottle to Ethan so he could pour his own, which he was not shy about doing. "What about you? What do you do?" "I drive stagecoaches. At least I did until I fell off one while trying to get down and broke my leg. Haven't done much since then. I have odd jobs here and there, teaching some folks how to read, but nothing I want to do permanently. I'm not sure if I can drive a stagecoach anymore. Even horses bother me after a time." Ethan opened his mouth to say something, but lost his voice when he saw a shadow fall over Jake. A massive mountain of a man, all muscle, hair, and hate, stood behind him. As the behemoth reached out to pull Jake from his chair, he leaped from his seat, gun already in hand, turned and cocked it, pointing it at the intruder, moving so fast it was almost a blur.